Summertime, summertime, summertime. I tell you what, if you live anywhere in the South, summertime is a great time to go bass fishing because it's daylight pretty much all the time. Hardly ever gets dark. And the nighttime is a great time to bass fish. But summertime also means a lot of soft plastics. Let me just run through two or three little things here on soft plastics that might help you. One thing to think about, the lighter the weight that you have, the more fish you're going to catch. So use as light a weight as you can possibly get away with. Now, I realize sometimes that might be 3/4 or 5/8. It might be pretty big. But the lighter the weight, generally the more bites you're going to get. So if you're fishing in the summertime and you're fishing dirty, dingy water where you're fishing shallow, go down to those small weights. The lighter the weight, the more fish you're probably going to catch. Other thing to think about here now in rigging these, you know, conventional Texas style is still a wonderful way to rig a plastic worm. This is a ringmaster right here, Lucky Strike ringmaster, creature bait. God, it's just a dynamite bait. I catch so many fish on that bait. It's amazing. That's a great color. Obviously green pumpkin. And all you need to do on this is this is a 4/0 Daiichi hook. All I do is simply to make a Texas rig, just run in here just a little bit. That's all you need to do. Just enough to cover this bend in your hook up here. Come up here like such, come around, and you're going to turn the hook around where that bend is holding the hook right there. Turn it around where that bend is holding the hook. Now, the next thing, it's really important to get this really straight. Now, this is about as big a hook as I can use on this bait because it almost gets down into the tail. You see where that bend hits? It hits on the last little ring on that ringmaster. So I'm going to come back here and just scrunch it up a little bit and go exactly through that right there. That's going to keep that worm good and straight. Now, I punched it all the way through. You see what I've done right there? I punched it all the way through. Now, you're going to come up and lay it. You can lay it on this particular bait. You can almost lay it in that little groove right there. If I'd hit the center, I could have. But in other words, I come up, though, and I just kind of skin hook that thing in like such. So the point is actually in the worm. That makes a real weedless situation right there. Now, if you want to, the old conventional, the way we started rigging Texas rig, come back here, again, scrunch this thing up a little bit, and just point it in like such, where the point is inside of the worm. Now, again, you've got a good solid, you know, there's no hook stuck out there. This is where you see those real dynamite hook sets you got to use on something like this. But that's a conventional Texas rig right there. I still catch probably, well, probably at least over half of my fish on just a conventional Texas rig. I use a skin hook more than I use that little rig there right there. Now, let me show you a couple other little things you might want to think about during the summertime as far as your worming goes. Wraps around there every time. This is another little rig right here. This is called well, most people nowadays are calling it a Ned rig. It's actually just a jig and worm, but it's a small jig. I finished second in the BASS tournament back, Lord of mercy, I don't know, early 80s, I think, a long time ago before most of y'all were born. And as I used to use a little tiny jig. This little jig was a round jig. It's about the size of my fingernail right there. That's how small it was. It was a flat jig and it had a tiny, tiny hook on it. Basically a bluegill hook or a perch hook. And I was using a little tiny worm about this long on it, fishing Lake Ouachita over there. And a boy over there had given me those baits a year before, and he told me, if you ever turn on Ouachita, try it. I went down a really, really clear water, and I threw that little tiny bait, and I'd be out setting, the boat would be sitting in 50, 60, 70 foot of water, throw that little tiny bait on 6-pound test line up against the banks and let it fall 10, 12 feet, 14 foot deep, and I was catching a lot of really nice big bass. Jerry Ryan won that tournament. I got second, and I didn't know who got third, but the other day, Hank Parker and I was talking, and I was telling that story, and Hank got third. He reminded me of that. But I asked him, I said, I didn't even remember you got third. He said, well, I can't believe you don't remember that. And I said, do you remember who got fourth? He said, no, I don't. So I remember who won that tournament, and he remembered who won. He remembered who got second. And but this nowadays, this is a mushroom head jig, and it's actually a shroom head. This is what they're calling a Ned rig. You see how small that hook is? This is a little tiny bait. That's an 1/8 ounce bait is what that is. And you put a lot of variety of baits on it. They make a lot of baits. What I like to do on this thing is just take the tail end of my pow sticks, the Lucky Strike pow sticks that I use. I just, you use them up and you use up the front part of them. So they get all, you catch several fish on them, and just take your scissors, and I've got those little bitty scissors I get at Bass Pro, and cut the end of it off about this much, the last couple, 2 or 3 inches of that off, and you've got a perfect worm to use on your little Ned rig type or shroom head baits. And then mostly on this, I will just simply put that bait on there, put a little drop of Gorilla Glue, the super glue type Gorilla Glue on there, just 1 drop on there, stick it on there, and that's on. I mean, it's stuck on there good. It won't pull off. I mean, you pull it off, but you gotta have to tear the bait to get it off. And that little tiny bait on light line will really catch you a lot of fish. Now, on spinning rods nowadays, what I've gone to is, and you'll see both of it right here. You see that little knot right there? This is 20-pound high seas braid. This right here is 10-pound high seas fluorocarbon coated line. I've just got simply tied a little double uni knot right there to tie those 2 lines together. So what the fish are seeing down here is that lure. Fluorocarbon coated line is invisible under the water, so all they're seeing is that lure, not the bait, just the lure. What I've got up here on my reel is real good 20-pound test high seas braided line, Grand Slam line. You notice I've got it full. You want to fill these spinning reels up. Now, the big advantage of using a braid, obviously you got bigger line. The other advantage, there's almost no line twist. So you pretty much eliminate the fact of spinning reels twisting your line. That's a really good situation right there. Let's see if I got anything else. Oh, I'll show you one more. This is more of a springtime technique. But here's another little way that you rig a plastic worm that we've been doing for a long time. It's again, it's a little specialty deal with a special jig. And the jig is a tube jig, and you buy these at Bass Pro Shop, and this is what you end up with. It just looks just like a tube. That's all it looks like, just a tube. You see my line tied on out here, and you got the hook. But now what we've got, and I'll see if I can work this out of here. What we've got is we've got a jig down inside the tube. And this is the way we rig, and we rig tubes with a slip sinker also. But this is what this looks like. You need to go to Bass Pro Shop, buy you a few packages of those in various weights, and that's what they look like. So when you go to Bass Pro, and if you'll look, this is a BPS brand. You go to Bass Pro Shop and just get that tube jig, and then all you do, now you don't tie your line to it. Obviously, you know, you wait and tie your line to it after you put it in. But then you want to simply come down here, put that in your mouth and wet it a little bit because it'll slide through there a little bit easier. Wet that, and you simply slide that up in there. And then once you have it slid up in there, you'll need to take your scissors or your pocket knife, make a little cut right there in the top so you get the eye through so you can tie through. Now, amazingly, you can catch 10 or 12 or 15 fish on that bait without tearing that tube up. I mean, it is a great economical way to catch a lot of fish in the summertime on soft plastics. That's a couple little tips that might help you this summer. Soft plastics is a great way to catch them. And let me tell you, I catch a lot of fish. This tube is mostly a springtime bait. But I catch a lot of fish in the summertime in suspended trees. I got a few trees back there behind me. Get in those suspended trees where the fish are suspended. The trees are not suspended. But trees that are 15, 20 foot, pitch out there to an individual tree, let that tube fall 8 or 10 foot down. If you don't get a bite in 8 or 10 foot, pick it up, pitch it out to another tree. I catch a lot of fish. That's a great way to catch suspended fish. I just happen to have this laying here. This is soft plastic also. It's a little bit different soft plastic. This is a buzzing frog, and this is simply made to throw out there. It's got the little paddle tails on it. It goes blah, 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 blah. It comes through the top of the water like a little mini buzz bait. And the only reason I just put it on here, now I rig that like such. I'll open my barb up, I'll open my hook up just a little bit so it's pointed slightly upward. You have that laying right in the groove of that frog. Here's the critical thing on this braided fishing line. I've got 50 pound, a lot of people use 65 and 80. I've got 50 because it casts so well. And if they break 50-pound test line, it's probably too much bass for this boy. But I've got 50-pound test line on there, and the key deal is, again, you're using braided line on that. And this is another little great summertime bait. Obviously, if you got a lot of grass and lily pads, stuff to throw in. In fact, it works great on a lot of farm ponds that are kind of coated over. You know, farm ponds get real vegetated in the summertime, and they get really hard to fish. That's a great bait to use in there. That's a little bit of kind of ramblings on how you can catch more bass this summer on soft plastics.